watch the replay, given the time of day, given the given everything that's going on in everybody's life. So welcome ladies who have joined, and welcome ladies who are going to watch the replay. Thanks for joining. This is the first time that I've ever done a class, I guess, aimed at the corporate space. So to give you a bit of a background of who I am, I'm a holistic life coach, a speaker, podcaster, educator, and up until sort of 3.5 years ago, I was also working in the corporate world. So this topic is very near and dear to my heart, and I feel like there's a lot more women. I only work with women as in my capacity as a coach, and I'm hearing a lot of common themes around women feeling stressed, burnt out, tired, unmotivated, not setting boundaries, not finding as if they can use their voice. And so I really wanted to deliver this workshop, and I just want to say thanks to everyone who provided their insights in the intake form that were really, really helpful, and that actually formed the structure of what I'm going to be talking about tonight. So here's how it's going to work. We've got about 90 minutes that will go by so quickly because I tend to say a lot in 90 minutes. I'm aiming for the last half hour to be Q&A, where anyone can take themselves off mute and ask questions, or you can pop your questions in the chat box. So if you're not familiar with Zoom, which I'm sure you are, given that you work in the corporate world, there is a chat box functionality at the bottom. So please feel free to use that to connect with other women, to agree, to share your own perspectives, to ask questions. And I'll keep coming back to that chat box throughout the workshop. Hello, Anine. You look naked. Have you got clothes on? It wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah, I was like, yeah, I've got clothes on. Oh my God, it's not until you pointed it out. I've just been like going up and down the stairs. So I'm like super puffed and hot. So I was like, I'm just gonna take my jumper off.
Oh, well, I did tell you guys to come exactly as you are, so do that. So most of you, I'm familiar with most of your faces, and I'm just letting more ladies in. Who here is completely new to me? Feel free to type in the chat box or give me a wave if I can see you. Who here is completely new to my work, hasn't done any of my workshops or courses before? Might be the ladies with the cameras off. Okay, that's all good. Okay, what I would love is for us to put a comment in the chat box now, and I would love to know what your current status is. So are you corporate gal and loving it? Are you corporate gal and hating it? Are you dazed and confused? You're looking for the next move and you don't really know what that is. What's your sort of status when it comes to your current employment? I just love to gauge. Welcome, Nazan. Nice to meet you. Meet you. So if you're not familiar with my work, I base all of my work around empowering and inspiring women to really step into self-leadership and self-sovereignty and knowing themselves on a deeper level. So that centers around self-awareness, self-acceptance, self-love, trauma healing, boundaries, all of the things. So yeah, really excited to have you here. Cool. Corporate and fatigued, love it. Okay, cool. So lots to cover tonight. Shit, that was lightning. Okay. I'll give you a little bit of a background of my sort of story, just to give you some context. So I worked in hospitality, and then I worked in the corporate world for probably 7 to 8 years as an executive assistant to CEOs in Sydney, London, and Auckland. I did a bit of travel, living overseas. And around 2016, I started to notice some symptoms of feeling really burnt out. So I would have heart palpitations on a daily basis, dizziness, chronic fatigue, shortness of breath, brain fog. I couldn't really formulate thoughts. I couldn't think clearly. I had real problems solving anything and struggling to make decisions. And I just sort of felt like I was lacking any real sense of purpose in what I was doing. I was sort of just this robot. And so it was then that I made the decision to enroll in a health coaching certification, which I did while I was at my full-time job. And that took me a year. I studied sort of on my lunch breaks and after work and on my weekends. And I got my certification after a year, started seeing clients while I was in that corporate job. And then sort of transitioned out over the case of about 6 months and then went back as a contractor. So I've been out of the corporate world for probably, I think, 3.5 years at this point, but I still feel like I have some really solid footing in the corporate world, given that it was where I came from. So yes, I'm a life coach. Yes, I'm into spirituality and I'm into women's empowerment and all of that kind of stuff. But I also have my feet very firmly planted in the ground. So I hope that that's relatable for a lot of people. So topics that we're covering tonight. So we're going to be covering a lot around sort of, well, a lot to do with women and women in the workforce and how that kind of plays out today and the evolution of the last 60 years of women entering the workforce. That will be very small. That sounded very boring. But we're going to be talking about how that impacts our stress levels today, how men's and women's stress levels are very, very different. Sorry, not their stress levels, but their stress responses and their reactions to stress. What else are we going to be talking about? I'm just looking on my second screen over here, which is why I keep flipping over. Strategies for dealing with stress in the moment, raising stress concerns with managers, how to remain calm and productive, dealing with office politics, that'll be a big one, how to switch off after hours and not take your work home, how to get your motivation back after working in corporate for a while, how to transition out of corporate, and then anything else that comes along throughout the course of the evening. So are there any topics that I haven't covered that you would love for me to cover? If there are, just pop them in the chat box. Welcome other ladies who are joining. I don't blame you all for having your cameras off because you've probably been on Zoom all day. So let's dive in. Let's start with the stress piece. Actually, usually sometimes I get told off because I start these webinars and I don't get everyone to just sort of like ground in and just take a few deep breaths. So perhaps you could just take a few deep breaths and just ground into the space, leave whatever you need to leave at the door and just sort of set an intention to be here now. That's okay, Nicole. Cool. Thanks for that suggestion, Anine. Love that. Keeping balance and not burning out, essentially courageous conversations around overworking yourself. Yeah, cool. Okay. So we'll start with strategy. No, actually, we'll start with a bit of background. So the background is that women have really only been in the workforce for about the last 60 years, which is kind of crazy. But I guess that gives rise to a lot of the stress and pressure that we're feeling today, because traditionally, we women were tasked with raising the family, with preparing the food, and now we do that. And we also pay for the mortgage and go to work and pick up the groceries and do all of that kind of stuff. So we now have even more pressure on us than we did previously. And of course, I'm sure men share the load with some of that as well, but a lot of that falls on the shoulders of women. And so not only are we going and sort of crushing our corporate careers and working just exorbitant hours, but we're also running the household, running the relationship, looking after the kids and all of that kind of stuff as well. So there's also the patriarchal culture, which still impacts and affects us today. So the patriarchy is basically our culture, which has been created, dominated by white men. And that is the system that the corporate landscape, the corporate structure is really built under. So there can be a lot of sort of misogyny, misogynistic behavior, patriarchal influence that comes through in the corporate world. So I don't know if anyone can kind of resonate with that in their workplace, but traditionally a lot of the more sort of white collar workplaces like legal, finance, property, banking, all of those kinds of corporate environments can really lend themselves to the patriarchy and to these kind of misogynistic undertones. And we've been raised in them. We're not even aware of them. And so things like expecting the woman to make cups of coffee or expecting the woman in the room to be the one that takes the meeting notes. If anyone has examples of that, feel free to share them in the chat box. But a lot of that is starting to become more recognizable and less, I guess, acceptable. And again, I've been out of the corporate world for 3.5 years. And when I was, my last job for the last 2.5 years before that was in media. So it was a bit more progressive. But before that, I have worked in banking, property, finance, and in London, which is really old school, really misogynistic. And so I have a lot of experience in that. So that's what we're up against. And we're also up against still the glass ceiling, you know, of women only being able to reach a certain level, the salary gap, all of that kind of stuff. So there's a lot of pressure on us, and there's a lot of, I guess, trauma, ancestral trauma that comes through our lineage that we are carrying through. And working in the corporate world essentially goes against our intuition. So as women, we have this inbuilt superpower, which is our intuition. Now, all humans have intuition, but for women, it's very, very strong. But when we're working in the corporate world and in the corporate construct, we are almost kind of like cogs in a machine. You know, there's only, Jesus Christ. Can you hear that? There's only so much, and remember, I'm speaking very, very generally here. There's only so much influence that we can have with the corporate machine. And a lot of the systems and processes and structures, they are already inbuilt, and there's only so much impact that we can have. A lot of us are doing the same tasks pretty much every day, day in, day out. And that's not the way in which women thrive. Women, or when I say women, I mean the feminine. So 90% of women have a feminine core. Women also have masculine energy, which I'll talk about very, very soon. But women are hardwired to have variety, to be in their creativity, to be in their emotionality, to be connecting, to be in community, to be collaborating. And I don't know what roles everyone kind of does, but I was an executive assistant. So I was essentially a team of one, and I was very autonomous. And I didn't feel like I had that collaboration. I held a lot of secrets of the company and a lot of secrets of the people that I supported. And so I often felt very, very isolated and very alone. And that was going against what it meant to be a woman. I should have been, and as an Aquarius, I'm very creative. And so I needed to be in my creativity, and I needed to be connecting with other people and feeling as if I had purpose. So the corporate structure as it sort of stands, it goes against our intuition. We're not really able to use our intuition when we are following a process that has been in place for 10, 15, 20 years that might no longer make sense, but we're being told to do it. Does anyone feel as if sometimes they're doing things at their job and they're just like, this doesn't even make sense, but I'm just going to keep doing it because this is the way that it's been done before? Maybe not. Maybe I can't see some hands. Yeah. And I just experienced a lot of like, okay, I'm doing this thing. I'm not really using my creativity. I'm not really using my potential. I'm not really able to connect to what it is that I'm doing and connect to the impact that I'm having behind it. But I'm just essentially being told what to do. And so that was why over time it started to really unravel for me. And I realized that I was just kind of this robot that was going to work every day and like doing these things. I was in such a high pressure environment. I wasn't nurturing my feminine side. I wasn't nurturing my creativity. And I certainly wasn't leaving my work at the door when I went home. I felt entirely codependent to my job. And codependence is really it's a kind of dysregulated relationship state where we become addicted to the thing that we're in. Usually it's between people, but it can often be between our job as well. So what that means in a corporate context is feeling as if your sense of self-worth is tied up in your job, or is tied up in the work that you're doing, or tied up in the output that you're producing. And it can be really, really harmful because it takes us away from our innate sense of self-worth and our innate sense of self-esteem when we put it in something outside of ourselves. So these are the things that I started to notice in that corporate world, and also reflecting back, having left it. There was a lot of imposter syndrome. Hands up if you've experienced imposter syndrome, where you just don't feel like you feel like you're a fraud, like you're going to get found out, like you're never going to be good enough, like you're about to get fired. And it was interesting. I had a client a couple of years ago, 18 months ago, and she was the CEO of a national organization in New Zealand, like really high-powered woman. And she admitted that she experienced imposter syndrome. And I was like, holy fuck, you're a CEO. Like, how much more validation do you need that you're doing a good job, that you're worthy of being at the top, that you're worthy of running this company? And things like imposter syndrome, it doesn't discriminate, right? I think there's some statistic that 70% of people experience imposter syndrome, and it's a natural mechanism of our nervous system that whenever we're doing something new for the first time, we are going to feel like an imposter because we don't have proof that we can do that thing. We haven't done it before. And so imposter syndrome is really just telling us that we're doing something that is meaningful to us, that we're doing something scary. But a lot of people will think that it means that they're not good enough, that they are a fraud, that X, Y, and Z. So that's what we're up against, this kind of sense of, I don't belong here, I'm not doing a good enough job, I'm going to get found out, I'm about to get fired, there's probably someone else who can do this job better than me. And we go to work every day under that sort of cloak, I guess, of secrecy around these fears that we have. But I'm seeing more and more women who don't actually have aspirations to climb the corporate ladder. There's a lot of people who are just really happy with where they're at right now. And I think that that's something that we get to celebrate, is that not every person wants to climb the corporate ladder and get to the top. And yeah, we get to celebrate wherever you're at and wherever you are going as absolutely perfect for you. We are going to be talking a little bit later about, how to actually transition out of the corporate world, if that's somewhere where you're finding yourself at the moment. So, are there any questions at this point about what I've just shared? I just wanted to give that high-level overview of what is kind of infiltrating our experience. Well, a guy in my office says the patriarchy is BS. Holy shit! What kind of office do you work in? I bet he's Gen Z as well. Okay, so let's talk about strategies for dealing with stress in the moment. And this was a suggestion that came in on someone's intake form. So the most important thing with stress is recognizing that we all experience it. There's helpful stress, which is what we call eustress, so EU stress. But then when we have prolonged stress in our systems, it tops over into acute stress or distress. And that's when we get a dysregulated nervous system and we get in that constant state of fight or flight. And that's what I found when I was experiencing massive amounts of anxiety in my job, is I was constantly in fight or flight. I was in this just heightened state of like hyper arousal and hyper vigilance of every single email that was going to come in. I treated every single email with the same level of urgency, even if it was just a benign email that was nothing important. My system would just be on high alert. And that's when I knew that I'd just pushed myself way too far and that my nervous system was just completely dysregulated. And so the important thing here in recognizing that our lives are under so much more stress than they ever were before, we constantly have notifications pinging on our phone. We constantly have things that are vying for our attention. And for those of you who might be in a sort of admin support role, you're maybe supporting like 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, I don't know, people at once. And that's a lot of balls to be juggling at once. Women are very, very good. Well, women are very good at multitasking, but it doesn't mean that it's good for us. So this constant context switching between emails and then phone calls and then this and then that and then this, it really does a number on our nervous systems. It really does a number on our capacity to just hold attention with one thing at one time. And I know we think that we're being productive if we're doing multiple things at once, but it's actually burning us out too fast, and then we're not productive at anything. We're not doing anything to a really good standard. So the important thing here is recognizing that, and then having a practice in place of resourcing yourself. So resourcing yourself means, and Lucy, you would have learned this last night in my workshop, and for anyone who did my workshop last Monday on regulating your nervous system, Resourcing yourself is about having practices in place that allow you to feel full. It's kind of like servicing your car, I guess, and having an oil change and having an oil top up, and having these practices in your life that allow you to feel calm, to feel grounded. And it's great to have them to turn to when you're feeling stressed or when you've had a really shitty week. But resourcing is about doing it proactively. So doing it so that you don't get to that state. So practices like meditation, I know it's boring, but it seriously works, breath work. And I'll share a lot of resources in an email that I'll send out to you guys tomorrow morning. So don't worry too much about noting everything down. But breath work, meditation, grounding. So actually putting your feet in the earth, walking bare feet on your grass or on the beach or on sand or going for a swim in the ocean is incredibly grounding for our nervous system. When we are constantly surrounded by Wi-Fi and blue light, so from our laptop and from the ceiling lights in the office, and Bluetooth and all of these technologies, they are jacking our nervous system. It's this artificial positive ions that are really affecting our nervous system. And so when we get out and put our feet on the earth and ground, it actually it gives negative ions, which defrag those positive ions. So it undoes all of the damage from the Wi-Fi and the Bluetooth and all of those technologies that have been hijacking our nervous systems all day. Everyone has time to put their feet on the earth for 5 minutes when they get home from work, I'm sure. What else have we got for resourcing? Yoga, Pilates, exercise, connection, being around animals, baking, having a massage, facials, baths, like all of these kinds of things that really boost our oxytocin levels. So you've probably all heard of oxytocin, which is the cuddle hormone. So you cuddle, oxytocin is released when you cuddle someone, when you have an orgasm, when you play with children or dogs. And the higher our oxytocin levels are, the lower our stress levels and cortisol levels are. So I was meant to send this out last night and I didn't, but in this book, last night to the people who attended my other workshop, this book, Why Mars and Venus Collide, which is very, very ancient, but is incredible. It teaches you about men's and women's stress responses and how different they are. And he has a list of like 150 ways to boost oxytocin. So it's things like baking, clearing out your wardrobe, giving to charity, like all of these different ways that boost our oxytocin and reduce our cortisol levels. So that's another great way of resourcing ourselves so we don't constantly live in that fight or flight state. Are there any ways that I'm forgetting? There's a million. How else do we resource ourselves? Sleeping well, eating well, hydrating, getting enough vitamin D, sunlight, all of that kind of stuff. Yes, weeds count, Lucy, so long as there's earth beneath you. All right. And there is, so I'll give a very, very quick description on this because it can get boring, but there's a part of our brain called the prefrontal cortex, which is the front part of our brain. It's the biggest part and it's otherwise known as the rational grandfather. So when your nervous system gets jacked and you start going into fight or flight and you start having all of these irrational fears, like I'm going to get fired or I'm going to get told off or something, the prefrontal cortex is the part of your brain that's responsible for going, no, Nicole, it's okay. Like you're not going to get in trouble. You've done a great job. So it's rational. It's the grandfather that pats you on the back. We strengthen this part of our brain by doing mindfulness, meditation, stillness. So just being in stillness and reflection and not having any stimulus coming at you. And so the more that we can work on that in terms of resourcing ourselves, the less likely we are to flip over into that irrational reactivity. So really important. Focusing on what you can control. So many of us will spend so much of our time and our energy focusing on things that are actually outside of our control. The current circumstances in the world right now, right? So many of us are getting caught up in the things that we can't control, like, fuck, 2 more weeks of lockdown. Oh my God, we can't control that. What can we do? What can we wholeheartedly control is our mindset, is the way that we take care of ourselves, is the amount of information that we're consuming and where we're putting our energy to. So we do this in the workplace as well, where we focus so much on the office politics and what this person said and this person's being a dick and, oh my God, my workload. And we can influence our workload and we can influence the relationships in the workplace, but we can't control them. But what we can control is the boundaries that we set with other people, the office politics that we actually choose to engage in, and how we're resourcing ourselves outside of the workplace so that we're not feeling constantly in that fight or flight elevated state. Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit about men's and women's stress responses and how they're different. So this is taken again from this book, hashtag. So these are hardwired responses, okay? We can't change them. So, and I'm speaking generally here in terms of sort of a heteronormative relationship, so a male-female relationship. And you might apply this to a romantic relationship, or you might apply it to a co-worker relationship or boss relationship. So just do what you can. Hi, Melissa. Okay, so women cope with stress through interaction and connection. So notice when you come home from a really shit day of work and the first thing that you want to do is probably like offload to someone, or you're not even home from work yet, but you're calling your girlfriends and just saying, fuck, this person was a nightmare. You want to interact, you want to connect, you want someone to share that burden with you, you want to offload. Men are not like that. They do not want to offload. They want to come home from their stressful day and they want to go straight to the man cave, or they want to go out for the run, or they want to be anywhere where you are not, okay? And it's not personal, it's just their way of coping with stress. And if women don't understand that, if women don't understand that the man needs to come home and defrag and offload in his own way, she's probably going to feel needy. She's going to feel offended that he's not wanting to hear her. So we just get to understand that we have very, very different coping mechanisms when it comes to stress. The next piece of that is that, so men cope with stress alone. I think that's just what we need to remember. When a woman shares her frustrations, a man offers solutions. Again, that's how he's hardwired. Whereas a woman doesn't actually want solutions in that moment. She just wants empathy. She wants someone to share that burden. She wants to offload. And so while we can't change the way that our bodies react to stress, we can change the way that we respond to our partner's reactions to stress. So that's really, really important. Again, that's in that area of what can we control. We can't control that they're a man and that's the way that they're hardwired, but we can control the way that we feel insulted that they don't want us to offload on them and they're going to their man cave. So really important distinction. If you want to dive deeper into that, this book, which I'll send out tomorrow anyway. So when men take, hold on, I need to expand my window. When men take time for themselves, so when men want to go away for a boys' weekend or they want to go and play golf and not have you around, women often feel neglected, right? They feel like, oh, he doesn't want to hang out with me, he's sick of me, rah. When women take time for themselves, they feel as if they are being neglectful. They feel as if they're letting someone down. And I think mums will probably experience this more than anyone else. When in actual fact, a man loves a well taken care of woman. So if you are taking time for yourself, if you are going out and having a massage or having a girls' weekend or doing something to really take care of yourself, a man loves it. And he also likes to take credit for it, which you can just let him have, even though he played no part in that weekend whatsoever. So what else do I want to say on this? When a woman is stressed, she often makes the mistake of giving more instead of focusing on herself to get what she needs. So you've probably all heard of the term people pleaser, or someone who just sort of overgives and doesn't have boundaries, doesn't save any of her energy for herself. And again, that's another hardwiring that we have in us. So when we're stressed, we often want to give more to other people, even though we're stressed. Instead of actually focusing on ourselves and just having space and resting and taking time for ourselves, or even taking a day off work, taking a mental health day. I remember when I worked in the corporate world, ringing in sick was the hardest thing that I ever had to do, and I avoided it like the plague because there was this ingrained sense of like, no, I have to work harder now. or I'm letting someone down. But looking at it now, I was just letting myself down. I wasn't letting myself rest. I wasn't actually listening to my intuition telling me that I needed rest, which was probably why I ended up with chronic anxiety and panic attacks and everything else that transpired when I finally took myself over the edge. Any questions on that stress stuff? Or anyone sort of agreeing with that? Nice, thanks, Taryn. I assume you're raising your hand to agree rather than to ask a question. Yeah, the feeling when you call in sick, it's freaking terrifying, I tell you. And then there's a sense of like, if you're taking a sick day, is someone going to catch you out at the supermarket and then tell on you? It's like, are we back in school? Am I wagging school? But that's actually a very real feeling. We do feel like we're in school because in many ways, the system of work, the system of being in the corporate world, it mirrors school, right? We're being told what to do. There's a time when we need to arrive. Sometimes there's a uniform that we need to wear. And so for a lot of us, we do feel as if we're still in that school environment. And so we can still have those same triggers, those same anxieties, those same traumas about being told off, about getting something wrong, about failing, about getting caught out, about that imposter syndrome. So all of those feelings that you're feeling in the corporate world actually are mirroring things that happened in school. Sister wounds, which I was going to talk about a little bit later, but it probably makes sense that I talk about it now. Office politics and office gossip can mirror something called sister wounds. So sister wounds is really a concept in self-work where we talk about problems that we've had in female relationships. So for many of us, we've had experiences of being bullied in school or having a girl steal our boyfriend at 14 or, just bitches in school, basically. And a lot of that, when that's unresolved trauma within you, that gets mirrored in the workplace. So you might have a really overbearing boss, or you might have a colleague who gossips, or you might sort of see those same dynamics playing out in the workplace. And so that's why it's really important to resolve and heal this trauma from childhood, from school age years, where we learnt to not trust women, where we believed that women were going to hurt us or take something from us, or thought that they were better than us, because otherwise that just plays out in the workplace and it's not fun. Okay, raising stress concerns with managers, which was another question that was input. So the first thing that I would say with this under raising stress concerns with your managers, so actually I'll share my experience because it was horrific. I went to one of my managers and said, look, I'm having these heart palpitations every day. I had actually just been in for testing on a lump on my breast and I was really stressed about it. And I brought this to them and they said, what would it look like? And I was bawling. What would it look like if you took a week's holiday next week and you just kind of like went home and just like looked after yourself? I was like, wait, you want me to take my holiday pay to go and deal with the stress that this workplace is causing me? Is that what you mean? And it was just this moment of like, fuck this shit. I cannot be here anymore. I can't do this anymore. And then the next day I actually got a full email from the HR department laying out sort of ways that they were going to decrease my workload and help me and blah, 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 blah. So the HR manager had obviously been like, shit, we're in for an employee case if we don't sort this out. And then I left anyway. So that was my version of that. But looking back on that now, my one takeaway would just be to back yourself. Women are very, very good at being reductive of what they're experiencing. So what I mean by that is saying, oh, it's not that bad, or, oh, everybody has this stress, right? Or everybody is experiencing what I'm experiencing, and we reduce our experience and we invalidate it. And so back yourself. Your feelings are valid. Whatever you're feeling, it's valid. It's not because you're faulty. It's not because you're defective. It's because your nervous system can't cope with whatever it is that it's experiencing. And that's just a normal response that our body gives us when we're taking on too much. So back yourself. I've said here, do it when you're ovulating. So we have a lot more confidence when we are in our ovulation phase of our cycle. So a lot more confidence to advocate for ourselves, to ask for a pay rise, to ask for a promotion, to have difficult conversations like that. You probably don't want to do it when you're in those few days before your period starts or during your period, because you're going to be feeling a lot more vulnerable. You're going to be a lot more wobbly. Not that there's anything at all wrong with tears in the workplace. I condone them, but do it when you feel as if you've got a better sense of power, because you'll back yourself more then as well. Get support outside of work as well. So make sure you feel resourced. So having someone who can back you up and say like, yeah, you are fully within your rights to be feeling stressed about this. You're within your rights to be taking this to your manager. So feeling supported, whether it's a best friend or a flatmate or a mother or a professional or a coach who can back you up and make you feel validated as well. I've said here, use the nonviolent communication framework. The nonviolent communication framework is a framework for communicating our boundaries while taking ownership and not sort of blaming anyone for anything. So I'll show you briefly what it looks like. There's 4 parts, and I'll send this out tomorrow anyway. The first part is observations, and then second part is feelings, third part is needs, fourth part is requests. So what that looks like is what I've observed or what I've noticed lately is that I'm feeling a lot of pressure. I'm feeling a lot of stress. I've got this bigger workload, blah, blah, blah. See you, Taryn. I've taken on all these extra demands, deadlines being pushed, whatever. And it's making me feel really overwhelmed and really stressed. And I feel as if I'm not, doing these jobs to my capacity. What I need is some more support, or what I need is some time off, or what I need is whatever. And so what my request is that we can sit down and kind of hash out how we can make the situation better for everyone. So that's the NVC template, which is those 4 parts. I'll send those out tomorrow, but that's a really great way for advocating for yourself and asking for your needs to be met. You're not saying, you're making me stressed and these dickheads over here are not doing their job right and this is going on. You're saying, this is mine, this is how I'm feeling, and this is how we can collaborate together in order to make this better for us all. And ask yourself, what's the worst that will happen? What's the worst that will happen if you go to your manager and tell them that you're stressed? Will you lose your job? Will you look like a dick? Will you seem weak? Like, really go through those scenarios. What's the worst that will happen? And then question how, oh God, what's the word? I've used up all my words today. Question how viable, no, that's not the word, realistic, I guess, they are, or whether you're actually just telling yourself stories. And remember this, that women are the seers. What I mean by that is that we just have, our superpower is to see. Our superpower is intuition. Our superpower is our inner knowing. We are so valuable, and we don't give ourselves enough credit for it. So just because something is being done a certain way in the workplace, it doesn't mean that it makes sense, and it doesn't mean that it can't change. So if you've got too much of a workload, if systems don't make sense, if you're not feeling supported by other people, advocate for yourself, advocate for the company, and stand up for what's right. Women hold so much power in terms of like creating change and creating ripple effects in the workplace, but we constantly cut ourselves off at the knees and say, oh, they won't buy that, or that's a silly idea, or someone else will be able to do that better. So advocate for yourself. Okay, that's that topic. Next one is, any questions on that, feel free to pop them in the chat box. Next one is around how to remain calm and productive. Okay, how are we going for time? Shit, okay, halfway through. How to remain calm and productive. So as I talked about before, defragging your nervous system. So having practices in place that allow you to feel resourced. And I know we're so busy, we're so important, and we don't possibly have time to do all of these self-care rituals because it just takes so much time. But it doesn't need to, right? And it's an investment. If it's going to allow you to feel better, if it's going to allow you to not have stress and anxiety, if it's going to allow you to thrive, isn't that worth the time? So treat it like going to the gym, right? We spend so much time going to the gym or going to the Pilates class or, doing all of these things for our outer body, for our physical body, but we don't really put the same love and attention into our inner body. And that's kind of what creates everything else on the outer body. So we've kind of got it around the wrong way. We need to be putting all of our attention and focus on our internal world. So our nervous system, our mindset, our beliefs, our trauma, all of that kind of stuff, and then less on the outside. That'll figure itself out later. So remember that I'll send resources tomorrow for this and for looking after your nervous system. I've set up a playlist on YouTube with lots of videos to exercises, meditations, breath work, all of that kind of stuff. Breath work and meditate. So I've already said that before, but I just cannot stress it enough. Since starting a regular Vedic meditation practice earlier this year, it has changed my entire nervous system. I no longer experience anxiety. I sleep a lot better. I'm a lot calmer. My digestion is better. Everything has been impacted by that. And also probably giving up caffeine has been really, really impactful for me. And now giving up sugar has been even more impactful for me. So getting really aware of the things in your life that are impacting you negatively. And I know we have this kind of belief that we need coffee, but coffee is marketed at women. It is trapping you. And I'm not telling you to give it up, but maybe just have a more conscious relationship with caffeine. And do you need it or does it need you? Yes, the sugar detox. Yes, we shall talk about that at some point. It's an ongoing journey. I think I had 4 cookies this afternoon, but we are a little bit more relaxed on the sugar journey at the moment. Okay, where am I? Oh, so I talked a little bit earlier about the context switching. So constantly switching between that project and these emails and that spreadsheet and this and that and this. Our brains are not created for that. Our brains are created for single pointed focus. Yes, you're an amazing multitasker. Yes, you can handle so many things at once, but stop trying to use that for validation. Stop trying to use that to prove that you're worthy. You are already smart. You are already intelligent. You do not need to have multiple balls in the air at one time in order to prove that. Single pointed focus is like a gift that we give ourselves, and it also really improves whatever it is that we're working on. It improves the output. So try to minimize that context switching as much as possible. Close down the tabs on your computer screen. Close down the tabs in your brain. Put the phone down. Just try and do one thing at a time and notice how your nervous system responds to that. Set boundaries. So boundaries is a massive part of this conversation. And we don't have time to go fully into boundaries tonight. If you're a complete boundaries amateur, I have a course called Boss of Your Boundaries, which is $99, and it will change your life if you're completely new to this boundary space. But boundaries are saying, no, not right now. Can somebody else do it? That's not my responsibility. That's not something I feel like doing. You don't really say that to your boss, but if one of your coworkers wants to invite you to do something after work, you can absolutely say that. Or I'm just nourishing my own needs right now, or I need to take a mental health day. All of these things are boundaries. And we are terrified to communicate them because there's a physiological belief that we're going to get rejected, abandoned, or die. So that's why we don't set them. Manage expectations. So be really clear in your communications about like, oh, wow, okay, sure, I can help you with this. I'm pretty overloaded at the moment. So can I have this back to you? Or realistically, I'm going to have this back to you on Tuesday at 4 p.m. Does that work? I used to be so afraid I'd be so afraid to say, actually, I'm overloaded right now, or to ask for an extension of a deadline. I would just pretend that I wasn't given the task, and I would hope that it went away. And I would hope that my manager would forget about it, even though I didn't have the capacity to complete it. And so there's so much power in saying like, yes, I can do that. Can you tell me when you need it back by? And then, oh, that's probably not going to work realistically. How about this time instead? Managing expectations, really, really important. Asking for support. So we're talking about how to remain calm and productive. Asking for support. I work with so many women who are so scared to, not scared, but are so not used to receiving, and that translates into receiving support, love, money, gifts, time, attention, like all of these qualities. So if you feel like you're struggling to receive support in the workplace, where else in your life is that showing up? Are you blocking your heart from being open to receiving love from a partner? Are you not asking for a pay rise because you don't truly feel worthy of receiving it? So receivership is a huge thing to look at. Where am I blocking my ability to receive support? Because when you're blocking the ability to receive support, you're also blocking someone else from the gift of giving you support. It's nice to support other people. We love it. It raises our oxytocin levels. But we're so quick to say, no, I got this. I don't need support. I'm good. I'm good. And then under the surface, we are not good. Stop pretending you're someone else when you're at work. So I speak with a lot of women who have these kind of two identities. They're one person outside of the workplace, and then they're another person in the workplace. And they're keeping up these different kind of identities. And they're sort of a social chameleon. So I'm one person when I'm here, and I'm another person there, another person there, another person there. And it's exhausting. We can't keep up with that. And so just bring your full self to the workplace. Be your most authentic self. Let your freak flag fly. So many women who are into this kind of spirituality and personal development and all of this kind of stuff, they're so terrified for their straighty 180 colleagues to know that they have crystals at home, or that they might be coming to work with a yoni again, or that that they're a vegan. And we get to bring all parts of ourselves to every context, right? We don't need to hide off parts of ourselves, because when we do, we give others permission to be their full selves as well. And I don't know about you, but I think that the corporate world needs more of that. It needs more women who are embodying their truth, who are in their power, and who are just all of themselves all of the time. Okay. Oh, and then on the productivity front, you've probably all heard of this, but there's a technique called the Pomodoro technique, which is working in 25-minute chunks. And so I think there's an app called Pomodoro. I have an app called Forest, which I think was like $3.95, but it works on the Pomodoro tech. I don't use it, by the way, but I'm going to tell you about it. It works on the Pomodoro technique of 25-minute increments. So I think the Pomodoro technique is you work for 25 minutes on, 5-minute break, 25 minutes on, 5-minute break. I think there's 4 of them, and then you get a longer break. And with the Forest app, you plant a tree. So while you're working, the tree is growing on your phone. And if you pick up your phone, it starts to die a little bit. So it's kind of got a bit of a moral fiber to it. That is a really great technique for productivity. I don't know about you guys, but I'm not really well equipped to work in like big chunks. Like a 90-minute chunk, can't do it. So I prefer to do those little 25-minute sets and then reward myself with a 5-minute break or something. Time blocking is another great tool for productivity. So time blocking is blocking out chunks of time where you do particular tasks. So this chunk of time is just for emails. And again, we're not context switching, so we're just doing the one thing. This chunk of time is for emails. This chunk of time is for really deep work where I'm doing a creative project. This chunk of time is for doing credit card reconciliations or something. Stops us context switching and allows us just to have that single pointed focus and make us a lot more productive. And we can also figure out what times of the day we're most creative. So for me, probably my most creative or impactful times are sort of 10 to 11, no, 10 to 1. Outside of that, I probably shouldn't be doing anything creative. After like 2 o'clock, I can reply to emails. I can do some admin, but I'm not going to be writing like lengthy Instagram posts. So figure out what times of day are your most productive for certain tasks and then work around that. I practiced doing sort of Mondays just for admin, Tuesdays just for podcast, and then Wednesday, Thursday for clients, and then Friday for self-care. And I kind of like doing that as well. So as much as you can within your role, kind of chunking different days for different tasks, which is called chunking. Any questions on remaining calm and productive? Cool. Okay. Dealing with office politics is the next topic. I would love to have some context around this if anyone feels called to share in the chat box about what goes on in terms of office politics, because I just have no idea. I'm a team of one. Although I imagine right now with the bloody biggest topic of Earth, I imagine there's a lot of politics around that. So I want you to remember that gossip lowers your vibration. So everything holds a vibration. Every sort of, every emotion, every frequency holds, or every emotion holds an energetic frequency, and gossiping is one of the lowest vibrations. And so whenever we engage in gossiping, it's a vibration of fear and it's a vibration of shame, and it holds a really low frequency. And so when we engage in that, it also lowers our frequency. It makes us feel like shit. Even though gossiping can feel really addictive, and the addictive part of gossiping is the connection element. So for a lot of people, for a lot of people, gossiping is the only way that they feel connected to other people, to other women, which is really sad. But until we know better, we can sometimes engage in those habits. So that's the first thing to remember, is asking yourself the question, like, is this fueling me or is this draining me? And really tuning into, like, how am I feeling when I engage in these politics? And where in my body am I feeling it? Am I feeling grief, which is generally in the chest or the lungs? Am I feeling like kind of powerless, which is in the pit of your stomach and your solar plexus chakra? How does it make you feel? Your body is always responding to you. Is it fueling you or is it draining you? Setting boundaries, really important. Energetic and emotional boundaries around what sort of behavior you will and won't participate in. Again, ask yourself the question, is this serving me? Is this serving me? Like, what is this giving me? Or what is this taking from me? And ask the question, is this me actually just trying to connect to someone else? Am I really just seeking a connection here? Am I seeking some sense of belonging? And is there another way that I can do that without engaging in this? I talked about sister wounds before, so that will really show up. The people who engage in the office politics and the gossip and all of that kind of stuff are generally going to be people with these unhealed sister wounds. If you notice that, and again, I don't have context, but I'm just making assumptions about what office politics is. Okay, there's something in the chat box. In our office, a lot of people are unhappy with not being able to get in contact with our boss, and he plays favorites with certain people and responds to only those that work how he thinks they should. Sounds like a cock. So people complain to me all the time, and then when I try and talk to him about it, he isn't interested in hearing it. Oof. Jesus. What's playing favorites? Oh, that's so shit. Okay, how would I deal with that? Nonviolent communication template. So observations, feelings, needs, requests. And if nothing's shifting, like, go above him if you can, or go to HR, or go to someone who actually is going to hear you. I know that I think you're planning to leave anyway, so maybe that's a good move. And I don't know about you guys, but I always feel as if the universe is always giving us exactly what we need. There's your wake-up call, Nick. The universe is always giving us exactly what we need. And so if we find ourselves in a situation that really goes against our morals and ethics and what we feel is right, maybe we're being pushed into something else. Maybe it's the universe forcing our hand in order to move on and actually do something that's more aligned. Yeah, that's a tricky one. That is a tricky one. If anyone else has any suggestions for Nicole, feel free to pop them in the chat box. I feel like that's above my head. Yeah, are you constructive when you approach him? Because sometimes it's that language piece, and also it's a woman communicating to a man, and we've got to remember how men hear things. Whenever a man hears you complaining about something, even if it's constructive, he feels a sense of responsibility. And it sounds as if he's not ready to take that responsibility. It sounds as if he's not sort of, I guess, embodied in his masculine. In some ways, he sounds a little bit messed up, really. Yeah, he doesn't sound like much of a leader to me if he's not willing to respond to that with constructive ideas. Okay. Where are we? Triggers. So when something triggers you, something can only trigger you. And when I say trigger, it means it kind of like activates a feeling in you that is out of context with, or out of, what's the word? Whatever, out of context with the thing that actually happened. So you're being triggered into an emotion that doesn't match the actual thing that happened. Sometimes it can be triggered back into an old memory or an old wound. And so if you're feeling triggered by the office politics, if it's a topic that really triggers you, you get to ask, why is this triggering me? What is this bringing up for me? Is this hitting on a limiting belief that I already have about myself? Is this hitting on a wound that I already have? Do I feel like I'm not good enough? Like, what is the trigger? Because triggers are always a gift. They're always an opportunity to heal something, to up-level something, to gain greater awareness around something. But often we just think, oh, fuck, I'm triggered. I need to shut down, or I need to react, or I need to eat. And we're not actually getting the juice out of that trigger, which is personal development 101. Okay, that's that topic. Next one, how to switch off after hours. Okay, this one's great. I love this. So switching off after hours. Who, oh, I can barely see anyone. You guys have got your cameras off, but put your digital hand up. Who resonates with feeling as if they don't switch off at the end of the day, and they're kind of like taking their work home with them, or we're all at home right now, so not switching off. Yeah. And there's part of that that's sort of the martyr within us. The martyr, you know, oh, I work so hard, and who's going to recognize me, and you know, who's going to validate me for this? There's also a lot of this can be so many things, but there's a lot of women who will identify with being overachievers or highly competitive, perfectionists. And these are generally, and I'm generalizing here, but these are generally women who don't feel as if they were validated or approved of or loved or seen or acknowledged as children. So there could be an element of that, of trying to prove something, of trying to get recognition, trying to get approval. And that's why we may find it really hard to switch off, because we just want to keep working. We just want to keep getting that validation. Yeah. Another piece here is that I want to talk to is masculine and feminine energy. And we're going to go into, we'll go into Q&A very soon. Masculine and feminine energy. So as I said earlier, 90% of women have a feminine core. And we also have sort of 10% masculine energy with that feminine core. So all men, all women have masculine and feminine energy. Some women are very imbalanced in their feminine energy, and so they find it easier to default into that kind of masculine energy. I'm sure you've all probably had a female boss who is very in her masculine, sort of very domineer. I certainly had a lot, and it gave me a lot of trauma, and I said I'd never work for a woman again. But these are women who are afraid to be in their feminine, afraid to be vulnerable, afraid to be in their emotional body. And so it's much easier for them to be the achievers, the doers, the shit kickers, achieving, striving, whatever. And so why am I telling you that? Why am I telling you that? That's right. Because the feminine is all about collaboration, creativity, nurturing, nature, flow, play, intimacy. And we don't really get a lot of that when we're in the corporate world, right? We're getting shit done. We're meeting deadlines. We're doing tasks. We're doing a million things at once. We are serving. And so that is a very masculine energy. And so no matter whether your work is in sort of fashion design or something perceived as quite feminine, you're still getting shit done, which means that you're still in your masculine energy throughout the day. And that is 8 hours of the day that you're in that masculine energy, right? It doesn't give you a lot of time to sort of really nurture that feminine side of you. And so what I see is a lot of women who they get up in the morning, they get the kids ready for school, and looking after kids is a masculine energy. They get the kids ready for school, they go to work, they do all their shit at work, get shit done. They're in their masculine energy for sort of 10 hours of the day. And then they come home from work and then they don't feel like having sex with their husband because they're still in their masculine energy and they still need to get shit done. And so it's really important that we have rituals in our life that allow us to slip into that feminine energy when we get home, whether we're coupled up or single, it doesn't matter. You're doing it for you, but that allow you to really sort of come back into your body. Because when we are in corporate jobs, when we're working, we're in our head, right? The entire day. We're figuring things out, we're problem solving, we're having conversations, we are being rational, logical, very left brain. And so if we come home from work and we stay in that state, we're relating to our partner, we are looking after ourselves from being in our head still. We're not in our body. We're not, I just got my verbs. We're not in our body. We're not feeling ourselves. We're not like tapping into our emotions and like nurturing ourselves. And so these are the women who live in that masculine state all the time, like the dominant state. They're out of touch with their emotions. They don't know what to feel. They don't give themselves any self-care because that doesn't get anything done. And so what I'm getting to here is having rituals that allow you to slip into that state at the end of a working day. And so that might look like, well, that should definitely look like, at the very least, changing your outfit at the end of a workday, or better still, having a shower. Water is very, very cleansing. Water is also very feminine. And so you're cleansing off the energy of the day, and you're also like really embodying that feminine energy with the water. And I really like activate all of my senses when I'm in the shower at the end of the day, and I feel it all. I'm not just in there to like wash and get shit done. I'm like having an experience in the shower. I love it. Lighting a candle, putting music on, lowering the lights, so dimming the lights a little bit, making it a bit more of a vibe, making it a bit more ambient, whatever, calling a girlfriend, dancing, play, like all of these things are going to get you out of your head and into your body. Doing a breast massage practice, doing a bit of a yoga flow. So those are your responsibility to do. And I know that it's much easier to come home from work, go straight to the fridge and find something to eat to make you feel better. But is it actually making you feel better? Or is it actually taking you away from actually being able to tend to yourself and come back into your body and then go and interact with your partner from that embodied space? So how do we do this when working from home? Well, you can change your clothes. I swear I have about 3 outfit changes a day. If you follow me on Instagram, there's always about 16 different outfits in one day. And there's a mountain of clothes on my floor to prove that. So how do we do that when working from home? Having tech boundaries. So yes, answering that, Melissa, just, I don't know, nurturing kids, tending to kids, even though it feels feminine, like you're raising them, you're feeding them, you're nurturing them, even though it feels feminine, it's also, I think it's the responsibility, it's the structure, it's the support, it's the holding, which is a masculine energy. It doesn't make sense to me, but apparently it is. Technology boundaries. So having a time where you switch off, you shut down the laptop, you put the phone on flight mode, you're no longer available for work emails. For anyone who's familiar, I'll see you, Lucy. For anyone who's familiar with NLP, which is neuro-linguistic programming, which is a technique used in the corporate space and also in coaching, you'll know Melissa. The simple act of like, I won't do it now, but shutting down your laptop and intentionally noticing when you shut that laptop that, okay, that means my mind switches off. I'm no longer in work mode. It's kind of like Pavlov's dogs, you know, you train the dog with the bell and the drool. It's the same thing. We can train ourselves to know that when we shut that laptop down at the end of the day, I'm no longer thinking about work. I'm in my feminine. Now I got to go have my shower. Now I'm going to light my candle. And we can have these little rituals or these little anchors that bring us into a different kind of feeling state. And how else to switch off after hours? Managing expectations with people, setting boundaries with your boss. If you text me past 5 o'clock, I'll respond the next day, unless it's urgent. These are your responsibilities to set. Yeah, deleting the apps off your phone on the weekend if you have to. Okay, 2 more questions and then Q&A for you guys. So how to get your motivation back after working in corporate for a while. I'm biased here, but I'm going to say leave. How to get your motivation back after working in corporate for a while. Okay, what I would say here is that it's not your job's responsibility to keep you motivated, right? Just like it's not your boyfriend's responsibility to keep you turned on, right? Your turn on, your responsibility. Same thing in the workplace. Your motivation, your responsibility. So what are you doing outside of the workplace? What are you spending your energy on? Who are you surrounding yourself by? Are they motivating? Are they uplifting? Are they people who inspire you to be better? What are you consuming? So remember earlier I talked about vibrations. Consuming the news every day, consuming Daily Mail, secret little habit of mine, it lowers your vibration, but I make sure that I offset it with something else. Consuming like fear-based stories and just low vibration stuff all day is going to lower your vibration and is going to take away from your motivation. So what are you spending your energy on? Who are you surrounding yourself by? What conversations are you having with people? How are you nurturing your creativity? What are you doing to feel inspired? You know, are you listening to podcasts? Are you attending seminars and workshops and things that really light you up? So it's not your job's responsibility to motivate you. But maybe that sign of lacking that motivation, maybe that's your body or your soul communicating with you that maybe it's time to move on. Maybe you've outgrown that role or that job or that industry or whatever. How scared are you to leave? Ask yourself that question. How scared am I actually to leave and to jump into the unknown? Does your work validate you? Are you staying for a sense of validation? And are you afraid to cut off that validation supply and leap into something new that isn't promised? We are hardwired for, what am I trying to say here? There's the pain that we know and then the pain that we don't know, okay? And the pain that we know, we keep really close to us. So what I mean by that is the pain that we know is being in a job and staying in a job that we really don't like and that doesn't motivate us anymore. It's painful, but we know it, it's familiar. Whereas the pain that we don't know is leaving that job and then going into the unknown. And, oh my God, what if my parents are upset with me? What if I can't afford my rent? What if I hate this new job? What if I can't find a job? And so those two are always playing off against each other. The pain that we know, this is familiar, I know it, it's familiar. And then the pain that we don't know. And our ego, our mind will always seek out familiarity over new. That's why so many people stay in jobs for too long, because they're afraid of the new. It's not because they're happy where they are, but they're just afraid of the new, and the familiar feels like a warm garment. And ask yourself, are you staying there because you're afraid to upset someone? Are you afraid to upset your boss or your co-workers? Are you afraid to upset your parents who think that you need to be in this profession, right? Okay. And then that leads me on to the next one, which is how to transition out of corporate. I hope you can hear me over that rain. Bloody heavy. How to transition out of corporate. The first thing I would say to that is to break up with uncertainty. No, wait, break up with certainty. Fall in love with uncertainty. We become so addicted to certainty. And again, it goes hand in hand with that familiarity. It feels comforting for us. That's our comfort zone. And so in order to do something that you haven't done before, you have to become someone that you haven't been before. And that to our nervous system feels scary. Imposter syndrome. Where's my validation coming from? Low self-worth, low self-esteem. So breaking up with certainty, falling in love with the unknown, falling in love with the in-between, which is no longer here, but not quite there yet, but falling in love with the space in the middle. That's where we get to see our potential. That's where we get to see what we're made of. That's where we build resilience and character, and creativity exists there. It doesn't exist in your comfort zone. The next thing I would say is set goals, then figure out who you need to become in order to achieve the steps that ladder up to the goals. So this part is really important, right? And why a lot of people won't achieve their goals, because they focus on the actual goal and the end goal and how it needs to look. And then they get overwhelmed with, oh, fuck, but there's no certainty and I don't know how to get there and there's too many steps and it's too comfortable here. And so focus less on the end goal and more on who you need to become on the process. So what character do I need to embody? What archetype do I need to embody of someone who can achieve that thing, of leaving her corporate job, of stepping into the unknown, of starting a side hustle, of whatever? Who do I need to become? How does that girl act on a daily basis? What time does she wake up? How does she nourish herself? What self-care rituals does she have? Who does she surround herself with? What does she do in her spare time? What does she spend her money on? And start to embody those traits of that person who can achieve that goal. Okay, these two steps come from, what's her name? Fuck. To Be Magnetic. Lacey Phillips, To Be Magnetic. 2 steps if you want to leave your corporate job and step into the unknown or step into creating your own business or whatever it is. Number 1, create a fuck you fund. So a fuck you fund is a bank account of money, usually about 3 months worth of living expenses, so that you can feel supported when you're in that space of the unknown. I'm no longer here, but I'm not quite there. You've got that fuck you fund to cushion you. And then the second step is because we want to be practical, right? We want to have the money behind us. Yes, we're like boss women and we can leap into the unknown and figure it out, but we also want to be practical. We also want to feel safe. So having that money behind you, and then also having a bridge job. So a bridge job is a job, if you hate this job, but you want to start your own business or you want to move into something else that's unknown, getting a bridge job in the process is a job that either aligns to something. So maybe it's in wellness if you really want to do something in the wellness field, or it's working under a team or a mentor that really inspires you. So a bridge job needs to have a purpose. It needs to have some kind of motivating, uplifting purpose, as well as paying the rent and making you feel safe until you figure out the thing. But the longer you stay in the corporate thing or the thing that's really sucking your soul, the less inspired you're going to feel to advocate for yourself, to make these big moves, and to feel confident in shifting into something new. And the final thing I will say before I hand it over to you guys is that ready isn't a feeling, it's a decision. And so if I feel like I'm preaching, trying to tell you guys to leave your jobs. I'm really not. I'm purely answering that last question. But if you're sitting here feeling as if like, I know I want to leave my job. I want to leave my job, but I'm waiting to feel ready. I'm waiting to feel certain. I'm waiting to feel sure. You're not going to feel it. You're going to decide it. You're going to stake a claim in that I am deciding I am ready. And Martin Luther King says that you don't need to see the whole staircase. You just need to see the next or the first step. So don't try and focus on the certainty of like, I know what it needs to look like. I know what the salary will be. I know that I'll feel safe. I know where it's going to be based. What's the next step? What's one step? Can you reach out to someone? Can you have a conversation with someone in the industry? Can you make a LinkedIn connection? What is a step that you can take? Can you start to build self-worth? Yeah. So with that, I'll get off my soapbox and hand it over to you guys for Q&A. Feel free to take yourselves off mute, or you can pop your question in the chat box. And while you're sort of readying yourself for that, I'll just say a couple of final things, which is if, as I said at the beginning, this is kind of a new area for me. It's something I'm just sort of dipping my toes in. I would love to support more women in corporate roles, whether that's doing kind of a group program for people in corporate, or whether that is going into corporate workspaces and rolling out wellbeing programs. So if anyone wants to talk further about that, drop me an email, please, and we can chat. And then, of course, I have my selfish program, which is self-leadership, self-sovereignty, self-empowerment, all of these kinds of things, which is starting up again in October, if that's of interest. We've got Julia on here who's in the current intake. All right, any questions, comments, concerns? Are there any questions in the chat box that I haven't answered? Thanks, Nicole. No questions? Come on, guys. Yeah, cool. I'll send you a link to the breath work and the meditations and everything that I recommend. I'll send you out an email tomorrow with resources. The thing with breath work is just finding one that works for you, because there's a lot of different styles. And so Insight Timer, you can always have a look on the Insight Timer app and just find one that works for you. Otherwise, Wim Hof on YouTube is a great place to start. It's 11 minutes long, really easy. Or Awaken breathwork, but I'm going to train to become a pause breathwork facilitator. So next year I'll be offering breathwork as well. My dream is to go and do breathwork in women's prisons, so watch this space. All right, if there's no questions, yes, I'm glad, Julia. If there's no questions, I'll wrap up. I'll give you guys back 10 minutes of your evening, and I will send out the replay. So for ladies who are watching the replay, hello, any questions, please feel free to email me. And yeah, let's chat if you think that this is something that could be helpful for you or for your workplace, or you want private one-to-one coaching. Thank you. All right, ladies, take care of yourselves, resource yourselves, go to bed early, and stay tuned to your inbox tomorrow.